Here and joining us here in Milwaukee, meet the press moderator Kristen Welker, our senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson as well. Kristen, let me start with you. We're at the RNC. There's a lot to talk about, but there's a lot to talk about out of the White House as well. President Biden testing positive for COVID. And there's also been reporting today, including by NBC News, that Senator Chuck Schumer, the majority leader, Democratic leader, went and had a personal, quote, very blunt conversation with President Biden on Saturday. What do you know about that?
Well, the fact that President Biden has tested positive for COVID does come at an incredibly complex time. We are told in that conversation with Leader Schumer and President Biden, he showed him the polling. That's part of what the blunt conversation was about. And in a statement, Schumer's office said he conveyed the way in which his fellow Democratic lawmakers effectively feel about President Biden, the concern that they could drag down and that he could drag down those down ballot races if he is at the top of the ticket. So what ultimate decision gets made, we'll have to wait and see. He's been defiant. He's not stepping down. He's not going anywhere. But another twist to all of this, Congressman Adam Schiff tonight becoming, frankly, the biggest name in the Democratic Party to call for President Biden publicly to step down. It's significant. Why? Because Adam Schiff is very close with the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So the question is she ultimately endorsing that viewpoint as well?
And this at a time the Republicans are putting out a well-disciplined show of apparent unity here, a major contrast to what the White House is seeing right now.
The contrast could not be more stark. We saw that on display last night when all of former President Trump's rivals came out to defend him, to say we are now on board with Donald Trump. We're going to hear from his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, 39 years old, has only served 18 months in the U.S. Senate. He is going to make a forceful, full-throated case, obviously, for this ticket, while also trying to introduce himself to the American people. This is a unified party around Donald Trump. There are some policy differences around Ukraine, around abortion, but bottom line, right now, policy is taking a back seat to this party, which is unified around former President Trump, who just, of course, survived that assassination.
Well, let's get Hallie in here on this. I mean, it's interesting to hear this reporting about Senator Schumer going to President Biden and having this heart-to-heart in Delaware over the weekend. What's notable is, one, that it happened, but two, that President Biden apparently rebuffed that effort if it was an effort to get him out of the race. He did an interview with Lester on Monday. He was going forward with his schedule. And it's interesting to see how the Republicans are reacting to J.D. Vance's campaign saying, we're not going to make a VP debate date with Kamala Harris because we frankly don't know if she's even going to be the VP nominee. She may be at the top of the ticket.
And for Republicans, it's about putting the spotlight or trying to back on the Democrats. But Savannah, you're right. If that the conversation as reported happened, Lester, it was just 2 days later that you sat down with President Biden, and he was defiant about this movement.
Emphatic. I gave him the opportunity, and it was no.
Pulling back, I think it's worth noting how extraordinary this moment is. You are talking about the top Senate Democrat, the party in control of that chamber of Congress, looking the president of the United States, the leader of his own party, in the face and even broaching the conversation of withdrawing from the ticket. That is not something to take lightly. The question now, as Kristen alluded to, paging former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She is the one who, about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, essentially gave other Democrats some cover when she suggested, even after President Biden came out and said, I'm staying in this race, that he would need some time to make a decision, that she wanted to give him that time. He had already made his decision, so that was a big signal to Democrats. I can tell you that in my conversations behind the scenes with those inside the party, there is real and deep anxiety about the possibility of President Biden remaining on the ticket. The question is, what do they do about it?
Well, the other big thing, Kristen, that happened today was, just to explain to everybody, there was an effort to do the official nomination of Biden at the end of this month, not at the convention, which is weeks and weeks away, to solidify it, to basically get it done before there could be any more doubt. And there was something of an uproar, and they now delayed that.
This is a hugely significant development because the DNC was equally defiant. We're not pushing this date back. And then we learned today that they pushed the date back. So the view within the Democratic Party is one of panic and concern. And what happens next?
Is there a blueprint or roadmap, if you will, of how to get there if they could get the president on board? I mean, he would have to not only be on board, but happy
It would have to be his decision, ultimately, Lester, because these delegates right now are pledged to him. He would have to decide that ultimately he is not going to run. The question becomes, if he were to step down, would he endorse his vice president, Kamala Harris? It's hard to see him not endorsing her. There would be a massive blowback if he didn't. Look, polls show she's within striking distance of former President Trump. Some polls show she does better than President Biden against former President Trump. But bottom line, Lester, this really has to be his decision. The question is, does the pressure become too great for him to stay at the top of the list?
Well, the pressure is on, that is for sure. And the president, of course, we should also mention the breaking news, recovering from COVID now and on his way back to Delaware.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.